This is called Good Morning. In 1971, I learned Transcendental Meditation at the State University of New York at Buffalo, where I was studying, and I graduated that year. In those first few months after learning TM, I had some very profound experiences of higher states of consciousness, which naturally made me want to get more understanding about what I was doing. It was so wonderful that I took on a job as a maintenance man at the Washington, D.C. TM Center, which was on an embassy row in Washington next to the Mauritanian and Nepalese embassies. Working there was a joy, and I wanted to do it because I wanted to be around the TM teachers. I thought that perhaps they could answer some of my very heavy, profound questions based on my experiences of higher states of consciousness. They were all very wonderful teachers and had a lot of knowledge, but I didn't feel really comfortable in asking these really special questions to them. I was waiting for the right moment, the right person to ask. And then one day, after I'd been working there for about 4 or 5 months, the teachers were abuzz with the word that a great Vedic pundit was coming and to spend a few days at our TM Center. Well, I went to the dictionary and tried to find out what a pundit was, as a wise scholar versed in the scriptures of the Vedas. And so I thought, maybe this will be my opportunity to ask my question. Well, Maharishi had invited Devarat, the great Vedic pundit, to come and spend a few days in Washington, and he brought his whole entourage. There were about 9 people in the entourage, and including Devarat's son. Also, Devarat brought a translator, which was disappointment to me because I then realized that Devarat didn't speak English, apparently, and relied on this interpreter. The interpreter's name was Srikanta Rao, and he was a very, very beautiful man. And one morning, over breakfast, I decided to ask him my questions, and he was giving me fabulous answers about very, very profound knowledge. But at one point, in the middle of his explanation, he said, "But why are you asking me this? You should ask this to Devarat. He knows everything. He's an incarnation of supreme knowledge. He knows 1,000 verses of the Vedas, and he knows them backwards as well as forwards. So what you should ask him these questions. You want to know how to get to the moon? Devarat will tell you that. You want to know how man got to the moon in the ancient times? He will tell you that too." Well, this was quite a lot to hear over breakfast. But I was so satisfied with Srikanta Rao's answer that I didn't make the effort at that time to speak to Devarat personally. But one afternoon, several of us were sitting around the lobby of the TM Center, maybe a half dozen of us were there, when Devarat came downstairs from the second floor where he had been hanging out. And when he came into the room, he waved to each individual. He waved to each one of us, and he looked, of course, like Moses coming down from the mountain with long beard and long flowing hair and long gown and piercing eyes, and he just immediately convinced me that he was a man who was living life in enlightenment, a man who was living in higher consciousness. And he very humbly waved to each person and made eye contact with each one of us in the room. After he had greeted each one of us with a wave, he said in a very vibrant voice, full of life, he said, "Good morning." And I think each one of us in the room thought, well, isn't this wonderful? He bothered to learn how to say that in English. The only thing is he sort of blew it because it was already dark outside, and at least he tried and greeted us. Just then, when we had finished having that thought, Devarat pointed out the window, and he said in English, "Outside, good night. Inside, always good morning."